Welcome, guys, to a very, very special episode of One Giant Leap for Geeks. We are doing something special this week. This is going to be a bonus episode, part of our All the Horror month of October. So basically what we're going to do is you're going to get some bonus episodes throughout the month of October. It's going to be us and a few other podcasts guesting on the show. We will be doing some co-hosting things on some other podcasts as well. And all throughout the month, you'll get a whole bunch of extra bonus, scary, spooky goodness. This very first one that we're doing, we are going to talk about the, I guess, perennial classic, Jason X. And I got some guests with me today. Obviously, I'm your host, Mike C. Squared. I have my co-host with me, Benoit. That's good. And then we also have some special guests. We have Rob and Sean from Movie Geek and Proud.
Hey, everyone. I'm Rob.
And I'm Sean.
So, before we get started, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself real quick?
Well, so Movie Geek and Proud is just basically a movie podcast. We just review movies that are from my collection because I have a very weird taste. And Sean does a little bit too. He introduces me to a lot of different stuff. But we also review current movies that are in theaters or anything that just, piques our interest, and sometimes we'll, do games and stuff like that too. But yeah, we just sit here and chat and see how movies hold up from back in the day and also current stuff, so.
Yeah, we're just two gay nerds with too much time on our hands.
Yeah, basically.
Sweet. All right, awesome. So, obviously you guys have seen the movie.
Yes.
It's the way I wanted to do this. We're not going to do a quote unquote formal review per se for an almost 20-year-old movie. So if spoilers abound, kids. So if you haven't seen Jason X, it's your own fucking fault. I don't know what to tell you at this point.
Well, and their life might be better for not seeing it.
Honestly, kinda, yeah. Yeah, because before we go into it, I had actually put out a tweet talking about how I had watched it today for the first time in a long time, and personally, it is the worst of the Friday the 13th franchise, and I was trying to get opinions from other people, and apparently I'm in the minority here. Most people hate Jason Goes to Hell and actually kinda like Jason X, surprisingly.
I feel like I went to hell after watching it.
I saw both movies in theaters. And the crowd in Jason Goes to Hell surprisingly was, more upbeat and having fun with it than Jason X. So I'm actually surprised to hear that Jason Goes to Hell is the worst.
I know. Right?
I had a lot more fun with Jason Goes to Hell.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, guys, well, whatever you say.
I would take either of those two movies over Jason Goes to Manhattan. I didn't like that one.
You bite your fucking tongue.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-oh.
I actually really like that one. I know a lot of people don't, but yeah, it is what it is. But okay, so with Jason X, we start out and the intro is interesting. Like the opening credits, it seems as almost though. Now this does take place right. This is the direct sequel to Jason Goes to Hell, correct?
Maybe. I don't know the canon.
I'm pretty sure Jason Goes to Hell is part 9, and then Jason X is 10. So it starts off in what it looks, I assume, to be hell. It's all this fire and like all kind of weird, title credits popping up. It looks like the Spawn movie from '99.
Yes, I was thinking that same thing. What I think that is that's inside of his brain, because at the end of the credits, it shoots out of his eye. And so I think it's some like inner, organ or just blood flowing in there. I think that's what's going on inside of his head.
Yeah, it's some kind of weird like metaphor for like brain synapses firing or some weird.
Deep thoughts with Jason X.
I know, right?
It starts off and in the credits that it popped up, I caught this. Kane Hodder is back. He was the actor who played Jason in like the first few original Friday the 13th movies. And I think by like part 5, they changed it to a different actor, and it had been like a different actor playing him each time. But I guess in some kind of, we're pandering to the fanboys. We're bringing back Kane Hodder, kind of like what they're doing with the new Halloween movie. They brought back the original actor from the first Halloween. And I was like, I guess that's cool if you care what the guy who doesn't speak and is in a mask the whole time, if you care who's playing him, it's like, sure, I guess.
Some people just have that whole nostalgia thing where, if they know who's under that mask for some reason, they just feel like, oh, the gang is back, and and I feel like I've been there the whole time, and it's a weird thing, but I get it. But yeah, I could have gone with anybody under the mask, to be honest.
Well, the way Kane Hodder slashes them bitches, it's different from any other actor.
He definitely has a much tighter overhand swing. You can tell he has not any issues with his rotator.
Right.
He is the Roger Clemens of horror films.
Oh, deep cut. That was good. That was a good reference. Yeah, but the first thing I noticed, like, right at the beginning of this is they have somehow converted Camp Crystal Lake into a research facility. Okay, so wait, what happened? I was like, it's Crystal Lake Research Facility now. I'm like, okay.
That was just a name drop for the sake of name drop. That was cheap.
Yeah, that felt
in my opinion,
really weird and out of place. Like, you could have just said it was a research facility anywhere. Why did it have to be the Crystal Lake Research Facility? It's like, okay. I guess because they feel like they can't have a Jason movie without him starting out at Camp Crystal Lake. Like, even in, Jason Goes to Manhattan, he starts out, in Crystal Lake. So they're like, hey, all the movies have to start in Crystal Lake, even though we're going to take this fucker to space by the end of this shit. They explain that they are going to be putting Jason into some kind of cryostasis, and they want to move his body from the research facility to some other undisclosed location. It's like some governing body and like espionage and shit going on at the beginning. And all that shit aside, the plot's stupid. I could care less about that. I felt bad for Jason because when they first show the first shot of him, he looks so sad and depressed. Like he's like chained up in the middle of this big empty room, and he looks like Ben, when we watched it, he said he looked pensive, and I was like, he does. He looks like he's in like deep thought. Like, how did my life end up here? Like, what wrong turn did I make, killing fucking camping counselors that ended me up in this weird BDSM room?
This is what I want to know. How did they catch him, and where were the guards? There was no one there to watch him. Yes. They had that one little teenager who tried to put a blanket over him and called it a day.
He was cold.
But I was like, this facility is so top notch. It's like, where was everyone? How did you catch this dude in the beginning?
Well, let's be real. When he threw the blanket over Jason's head, I'm like, you deserve to die for that.
Yeah.
Jason was looking depressed.
Yeah.
And do you think he's like a cat or a lizard or something? Do you think if you turn off the lights, you'll fall asleep?
Treated him like a parrot and was like, blanket, go to sleep now.
Yeah.
He was trying to console him because he was sad. He was wrapping a blanket around him, and he's like, everything's going to be okay.
Did anybody else notice just how bad Jason's hair looked? And you can see through the mask, he didn't have any facial makeup or anything. It was just like normal face underneath.
He did grow some hair.
Yeah,
he's been using that Rogaine.
Yeah, they made it a point to make the exterior of his skull and stuff all, made up and prosthetic-y, but you're right, underneath the mask, through the eye holes, you can just see it's just Kane Hodder's.
There was a human, I mean, I saw some white skin. Jason ain't white no more, and he's no race. Like, right. I don't know how we found out he was white just then, but yeah.
We see the lonely guard that's fresh out of high school. He covers up Jason. He ends up obviously being killed. But during that little part, we find out some interesting information about Jason. Apparently, Jason is a part of the X-Men because they say a line in there where he can regenerate. And I'm like, oh, is that what's happening? Because I just always assumed he just...
It's Wolverine.
Right. I just always assumed he just can't die. I didn't think he actually regenerated his flesh because that kind of throws in the face of all the other prior Jason movies where he's like a rotting corpse. Like, he keeps getting progressively worse as each movie goes on. So I'm like, now he regenerates? Like, okay.
That's interesting. I don't think I caught that line.
I didn't think about it.
Yeah,
they
that's
did
why
say
they wanted to research him.
Mm-hmm.
So Lightning literally just turned him into a mutant. And
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. He's a part of the X-Men now, I guess. I'm like Wolverine and, oh God, something else. Yeah. And pretty much by the end of it, he legit is Wolverine with the metal and shit. But the first few deaths in this, it felt like an action movie. Like the tone that they set at the very beginning was really weird because it didn't feel like a Jason movie or a Friday the 13th movie at all. Like there's a lot of comedy in this and there's a lot of action. There's not like deaths. There's like action fight scenes and it's really weird.
What I want to know is when he killed that first guard in the beginning and then whoever that military guy was that wanted to transfer him against Olivia Munn's wishes, he like killed all those guys, kicked the head guy through a door, and somehow as he did that he wound up in the perpendicular hall behind them.
Yeah.
He can teleport too.
Yes.
I did
This is not the first time
thing.
he just teleports either.
Well,
Yeah,
he had that underground tunnel in there, just like he did in the remake. You remember that's how he gets around, is that underground tunnel.
Yeah. See, at least in that they explain how he gets from, point A to B without you seeing him. In this, it's like, you were just in a room.
Sneak attack by the doorway and then just like went behind him. He's like, I'm just gonna pose. So, the guy who went in like through the doorway. So that's David Cronenberg.
Yep.
Famous director. So he basically wrote his entire scene just right. Like every line that he said, and his like dream before he dies was to be in a Friday the 13th movie and die. So like even the way that he died was written by him. So that was all him.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he wrote himself in there to die and get last words.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
I mean, he picked a really crappy way to go out.
He did. He must really hate himself.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, I can't blame him. I watched what he wrote and I hate myself.
But Ben has already mentioned it, but the main character, our main protagonist, I didn't catch her name, but does she or does she not look like a poor woman's Olivia Munn?
I heard you mention her earlier, and I was like, oh, they must be talking about the lead girl.
I could see it, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, for the record, if you guys listen and don't know her real name, it's not Olivia Munn, but I'm going to refer to her as that for the duration of this podcast. Her real name is, and I may mispronounce this, Lexa Doig? Doig?
I went with Doig.
D-O-I-G.
Yeah, I went with Doig.
Doig?
Doig.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. There's two lookalikes in this movie because she reminded me a lot of Olivia Munn, and then the guy who works on the android, I swear to God, he's a poor man's Andrew Garfield, like all the way down to the hair, mannerism. I was like, wow, it's Spider-Man. I was like, this movie is great.
I guess I will bring this up since you brought him up. So that's the character, Tusnarin. Is that how you say his name? Tusnarin?
Sure.
So the guy who made the android. So immediately, and this happened to me when I saw it in theaters. I recognized him immediately. So he was on an episode of Nickelodeon's Are You Afraid of the Dark? Do you guys remember that show?
Of course.
Yeah, so he was in this story called The Tale of the Dark Dragon. And it wasn't necessarily a scary one, but he drinks a potion to make himself popular. But on top of that, his dark dragon comes out. And so he had this duality of playing his cool self versus his nerdy self. And yeah, anyway, so he was the lead in that episode. So immediately I knew who he was.
Interesting. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's some good trivia. Good job.
Yeah, that was 93. So that was the year before. Wait, yeah. When did Jason X?
2001.
2001. Okay. So yeah.
Well, yeah, almost a decade later, but still. It's like you're going to be typecasted into, like low budget horror shit for the remainder of your acting career. Sorry, kid. But yeah, no, she was actually our main protagonist. Besides her looking like a poor woman's Olivia Munn, she was actually pretty boss at the beginning because she single-handedly took down Jason when like an entire room full of special forces dudes just got slaughtered, and she just had a shotgun and a cryo chamber and she took him down. All the way until she did something stupid and stared at him as he's freezing in the thing. It's like, he's been in that research facility for God knows how long at this point. You've seen Jason a bunch of times. You don't need to watch him freeze in the cryo chamber. She could have just sat next to it and just let him froze out and been done and never got stabbed.
That would have made the movie boring, though. Wouldn't it? You gotta be stupid.
Yeah.
You gotta be stupid to progress this film.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, I mean, hey, look at it this way. They could have easily just made the movie a million times better by never having him go into space in the first place. So, but hey, that's neither here nor there. But they go on to, they fast forward in time. Apparently they don't give you any dates really at the very beginning until you actually get out into space. Later we see a team, come into the Crystal Lake Research Facility to recover, well, I guess they're not there specifically for that reason, but we find out later that it's some dubious stuff going on behind the scenes. But they recover Jason and our protagonist, and they take her back into the spaceship, and that is how we get into space. Now, they don't tell you this right away, but there has been a 445-year jump from that point to where we pick up with the characters later. And they don't explain anything besides just kind of visual stuff, but apparently Earth is destroyed, basically, and we've colonized space, and we're living off in space now, and Earth is just kind of abandoned, I guess.
One thing that I liked about the scene, well, maybe not liked, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. The pilot, they're flying into the ship, they find out that there's a female, and the pilot's like, a female? Yeah! I'm like, You're a little bit rapey, sir.
A little bit?
He was so
everybody
creepy.
On this ship was thirsty as shit. I'm like, have you people never had sex before?
So
like,
creepy.
literally every character was sex crazed. It was ridiculous. From the pilot to the professor to the students. I think Jason was the only person not trying to fuck somebody during this movie. Because I'm like, what is happening right now? Apparently in the future, everybody's taking Viagra.
Can't be a Jason
One
movie without
line.
all the sex.
One line he said, "The frozen woman is single now." Like,
It was so rapey. It was so rapey. Oh, he was so creepy. That dude gave me chills. That was the scariest shit in this entire movie.
That's true.
It was the scariest thing in this whole movie because that shit was, ugh. And I was like, oh, poor woman's Olivia Munn. I'm like, you're going to go up there and get raped. I'm like, you know, taken out of cryo sleep, and then you got this creepy asshole up there. Though I don't think he ever actually interacted with any of the other characters in the movie, though.
No, he had a co-pilot for
the
like
heck?
2 seconds.
Yeah, he talks to them, but you don't ever see him on screen with anybody else, I don't think. But before we get too far off into once they get on the ship, I did want to bring up the, I guess, hazmat suits that they wear when they go to Earth to take Jason and the protagonist away. They have like popped collars and they're not wearing gloves and it's just kind of like a gas mask. And I'm like, what is this protecting you from again? I'm like, they're like, hey, if we're going to go, you know, and be in some kind of possibly contaminated area, I have to go in style. Like, I have to have my collars popped and all this shit. Like, I can't just go down there in these, you know, just weird yellow hazmat suits. It's got to be something cool. And then everybody on the ship was wearing like a midriff and or tank top as well. And I'm like, who fucking is the costume designer for this movie? Because I'm like, this came out in 2001. Like, The Matrix had just came out in like, what, 2000?
Yeah.
I'm like, who designed the costume?
99,
of this?
I think.
Oh, 99. Yeah, even before that. And I was like, they had much better style than what we saw in this because it was really weird.
The fashion was still 90s.
I'll bet you it was the rapey pilot. He did the fashion.
Right. He's like, everyone has to be showing the bare minimum of 60% of your body, like at minimum.
well, I think honestly, by watching that and then kind of setting the scene, it gave me a vibe of like the original Friday the 13th, where all the camp counselors at Crystal Lake were just kind of like horny teenagers who were into, you know, well, obviously they weren't doing drugs up there on the ship, but I mean, like, they were just into partying.
Sure.
And it really threw me off because before they established, like, the roles of everybody in the film, they seemed just like a standard, maybe, science team.
Yeah. Initially, yeah, when they first go to Earth, yeah.
So it was just a really weird flip to having all these kids wind up essentially being like immature teenagers.
Yeah, there was no, like, build-up to it. It was so odd. So, basically, we get on the ship, and it seems like some of the characters know who Jason is, but most of them don't. Which is really odd, because there's a character that pops up for, like, he's just exposition man. He literally serves no other purpose in the movie besides to explain to the professor who Jason is and why he's dangerous, and I guess the audience as well. And apparently, and I want to find out if this is true or not, he said that Jason had a 200-person body count. I'm like, is that true?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Because I want to know, I'm like, did someone actually watch all the films and go through and count how many people Jason killed and then came up with that number?
There's a lot of infographics online especially with horror. They always do sort of like a versus or just some kind of stats list, and they'll usually give a body count. I'm sure even Freddy vs. Jason has a body count special feature on their DVD or something.
That seems like a lot, though. That's over 20 per movie.
Yeah, I'm like, did we miss something somewhere in between? Because I was like, even in Jason Goes to Manhattan, he kills a bunch of people in that. But I'm like, 200? Are we sure about that?
Well, technically, Jason X is the movie that has the most kills out of the entire franchise.
Oh, yes. Yes. Because I said that, I think, when we were watching it. There's a scene later in the movie where they crash into a colony, and he kills probably about at least 100 people during that, 5-minute scene alone.
So, director...
That still makes me laugh. I'm evil.
So, the director actually went on record and said there was at least 20,000.
Whoa!
Yeah, it was
on that colony.
James Isaac. Yes, he said 20,000. That's what I read.
Holy shit! Because I know the professor kept saying they have all these special forces team. They're 60 strong or something like that. And I was like, okay, but I guess I didn't take into account the civilians that would have been there too, because that was a really big colony. It wasn't like the space station or something like that. That we have now. That shit was huge. As was their spaceship, which threw me off the entire movie, because when they're running through all these halls and all this stuff, I'm like, why is this ship so fucking big? There's only 13 people on board. Why is this ship so huge? And it wasn't like they were, because it seems like they're a science team or something in the beginning, but apparently they're just fucking students. They're on a field trip, I guess.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
Which didn't make sense to me, because I'm like, okay, we're on a field trip. Yes, it is the future, but hear me out. If I go on a field trip today to the zoo and I find a loose lion cub, I do not have carte blanche to take it back with me. You can't just go bring shit back with you from your field trip as souvenirs and shit. It's if we're going to Earth Prime, as they called it, and it's all, irradiated or whatever the hell happened in between 2010 and 2000, whatever the fuck, you can't just start bringing shit back with you. That never made sense to me. I'm like, okay, if you guys aren't a excavation crew or something, why are you taking these bodies back with you? I never got that. I mean, we know later in the movie that the professor is like, oh, well, I can use this to make money somehow, but it never made sense why they would even want to collect the bodies in the first place.
It never even established why they would have went to the old Earth in the first place. They just show up there.
Well, I mean, I guess they just wrote it off with the field trip line, which it's whatever. Sure, you're going back to Earth to go see what it used to be like there. Who knows? But I'm like, why were you guys collecting specimens and shit? That part I didn't get. That didn't seem like what your goal was supposed to be.
Any excuse to get young bodies in the film. I think that's all it was.
Yeah, maybe. I did appreciate though that at least in my eyes, the real protagonist of the movie. What was his name, Ben? It was Bronson? Brodsky or something?
No, it was, I got it written down here. It was Sergeant Bronsky.
Yeah, Sergeant Bronsky. This dude is the most boss-ass character I have ever seen in a Friday the 13th movie. Hands down. Even more so than the telekinesis chick from one of the other Friday the 13th movies. This dude, literally, there is multiple parts of this movie where he has a fist fight with Jason. And I'm like, this is awesome.
Unlike Johnny Cage's fist fight, which lasted 4 moves and a fatality.
Oh, that was so sad. There is a part where once Jason comes out of his cryo sleep, because obviously they're thawing him out for some apparent reason, and even though they've already told him, hey, he's killed 200 some odd people, he has this regenerating ability, yada yada yada, they're still like, oh no, we got this under control. It's totally fine. And Jason wakes up, kills, one of these students, and then the SEAL team is sent out to go find Jason, and there's this one guy who has pretty much like a Jet Li karate fight with Jason, and he's doing all kind of flips and kicks and punches, and Jason just casually just pushes him off the balcony. And it's so sad because he just like gets impaled on this giant fucking, I guess, wine opening screw thing. Like, I didn't understand what that was nor why it was.
I think it was some kind of drill that was just sticking up in the air.
Okay. And did they ever establish what that room was for? Cause there was like anchors in there and a bunch of chains and drills and shit. And it's like, what is this room?
Most of the rooms looked very similar, but I figured they always hung out in that virtual reality room. I didn't really notice any other room that they kind of were exploring.
That's a good point.
But I did have a question though.
Sure.
So they thaw Jason out and they presume that he's dead. So obviously they're not worried about him coming back to life after being frozen. But the way that the camera angles were sort of watching Jason sort of slowly wake up, it really seemed that the two kids having sex was the trigger that got him to wake up. Because the minute she's moaning and probably comes, that's when he sprints up from the bed. He just rises up right when they were doing it. Right. And my thing is,
I wonder if that was a purposeful edit. Like if it was filmed that way originally or if they edited it that way after they filmed it. But you're absolutely right.
So he smelled sex and candy.
Right.
Or else this is like a metaphor for life begins at conception.
Well, in the original films, he was driven by killing the counselors for having sex while he died.
Well,
so I wonder if that's what it is.
That's his trigger. Anybody who has sex in his films, that's his thing. Like, he wants to kill them because that's why he was neglected when he died. So it just made it look like that's what woke him up. Like, other than his mom, him hearing people have sex is what gets him to wake up. But
if that kid could have just kept his dick in his pants, this whole movie would have been fine.
That's another thing that I was thinking about. It's like, if they hadn't had sex, we probably wouldn't have had Jason wake up. But something else that I noticed too was, so the GIF that you posted today, right? So did you notice in that he lifts himself up? Now, I don't have too much of an upper body strength.
Or any at all, but go on.
But honestly, I was watching that GIF and even in the movie, I was like, damn, you have good upper body strength. Cause if I'm laying flat down on the ground, there's no way I can lift my body up without my legs like rising up, or just me using my body to lift my upper half up. I don't know if you guys noticed this, if you've ever done it lately, but just like try it. Like, lift yourself up without turning to your side. Or, he literally just lifted himself up with no use of his legs. I was like, damn.
He heard sex
Absolute
and he became
core
erect.
Strength.
That
is core strength right there.
Heavy core strength.
Yeah, that's that core strength. He went to that Michael Myers fucking workout camp because Michael Myers does the same thing. He just sits straight up, and it's like, you must have the best fucking abs ever. Like, I swear, underneath all that, fucking clothes and shit, I'm pretty sure he has a six pack. He looks like he's a heavy set guy, but he's really toned underneath there.
It just reminded me of The Undertaker. Like, he just knows everything and just sits right back up.
That's good. Yeah, The Undertaker. That's a good, yeah.
But it kind of bothered me a little bit how before he, when you could see his hand move into a fist, he was slowly getting movement back. I think 3, maybe 4 times, it would go to the girl who was looking in the microscope. She'd turn around, what? Back to work. What? Back to work. I'm like, just fucking kill her already.
Yeah.
Okay, you're in a room with somebody who you've heard about is just kind of like a psycho killer. Mm-hmm. If you, for whatever reason, get creeped out or freaked out or have a bad omen, just fucking leave. Leave.
Yeah. Maybe just don't have your back turned to them.
Right, and why wouldn't they have weapons?
Yeah.
Working with the killer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what was so funny about that scene, though, is when he finally does get off the table and she looks back for that final time, she doesn't even seem like all that scared. She's just like, oh, where'd he go? And I was just like, are you fucking serious right now?
Would have been freaking
was like,
out
that dude is gone. He
seeing
should've
a
been
missing
freaking the fuck
person.
out.
Exactly. So nod to that character, that blonde woman. So her name in the movie is Adrian. So that's a nod to the very first Friday the 13th because the final girl's real name is Adrian King. So they just kind of threw that in to, be like, yeah, first one. But yeah, it was a nod to her.
You can't satiate the fans with that kind of Easter egg shit when you've jumped the shark this hard. It's like, hey, I appreciate you guys trying to, put details in, but we have gone way off the rails to be trying to be like, no, we're doing callbacks to the original. And yeah, it's still the same thing. Like, no. No, guys, no. But I did like, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but the way he kills that first girl on the ship, it is very similar to Halloween 2, where Michael Myers, he drowns the nurse in like the hot tub and it melts her face off. Instead of in this, he freezes her face and then like smashes it open.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, water is technically Jason's element, so hey, that's how I correlated it.
He was like, yeah, no, water, cryo, water, it's all the same thing, right? They then, like, after, they realize that Jason's loose on the ship and he's starting to kill everybody, our, poor woman's Olivia Munn, she explains that they have had Jason in captivity since 2008. So when we first pick up on the movie at Crystal Lake Research Facility, they've had him there for at least 2 years because she goes over how they've been trying to execute him and trying all these different ways, like with gas and explosions and gunfire and hanging, and none of this stuff seems to work to kill him. And so they just kind of just kept him, and it was like, well, why not just shoot him off into fucking space? Like, that, you could have solved the problem right there. It's like, granted, yes, we weren't colonizing space by that point, but I'm sure you could have just sent him into a rocket into the fucking sun and been done with him.
That's what I was thinking. It reminded me of World War Hulk, where they just blast him off the earth and they're done with him for a bit.
Well, I think that guy mentioned something in the beginning about finding out his rejuvenating powers, obviously to use as a weapon, to make super soldiers or whatever the case.
Money.
So they never wanted to get rid of him because they always found that his, body was just something they had never seen before. So, it just only takes one scientist to ruin the world. That's just all it comes down to.
Pretty fucking much.
It gave me some really Resident Evil vibes. Like, you could tell the government was going to use him as a BOW.
Oh, yeah.
They just they didn't want to figure out how to destroy him. They want to figure out how to control him.
Yeah, it's just like Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. It's like, yes, how can we use these prehistoric dinosaurs as weapons? Like, are you fucking serious right now? Like, tanks are not... Okay, I'm sorry. Jason is cool, but missiles will always be better than Jason Voorhees. Like, I don't see why you would need to use him in any kind of practical fight, in military, engagement whatsoever when we have drones and shit. Like, really? Jason? That's your solution to, your secret weapon? Like, I guess. It's like, well, if he doesn't kill everyone, in the military before they get him to Iraq, then I guess he could be effective, sure.
Promise him fame and fortune, just like Professor Lowe did, and he'll abide by any rule you give him after you just offer him some money. Apparently, that's what he tried to do. That was so cheesy.
The professor in this was absurd.
Jason's not going to kill anybody unless they're fucking.
Yeah,
that is true. That is true. Yes.
Speaking of that, he was into like nipple clamps.
Oh yeah, he was into some weird shit.
He was wearing a dress. He had nipple clamps. The android's nipples fell off. I was like, what the fuck am I watching?
There was a lot of references to nipples in this. I did catch that as well, yeah.
Everything about that teacher or professor or whatever he was in relation to the kids, not a single thing he said or did in the entire movie gave off the impression at all that he was a teacher. We're just supposed to accept, this guy's a teacher.
They called him professor, so you're just supposed to just go with it, I guess.
He has no real authority, no real control. He seems just as immature as the kids he's supposed to be teaching, even though they don't really do anything, which makes you assume they are learning a lesson. It's like he's just there and they just gave him this role. Like, it's completely meaningless. It's arbitrary.
Right.
You know what's funny is this whole time we've been talking about this, I've actually forgot to bring up my favorite character in the entire movie. The stoner kid who freezes his hand to the coffee mug at the very beginning and the one that Jason chops his arm off. That kid was like my favorite character in this whole movie because I was like, you know, as dumb as this shit is, I guess I can buy him as well. I'm like, he's the only thing that makes sense to me. It's like, yeah, no, he's just a fucking stoner. He's like a stowaway. I felt like he was never really a part of the crew or the class. He just kind of snuck onto the ship and just was like high and just didn't realize where he was. And he was like, oh, okay, I'll just go along with this shit, sure.
Did you guys notice, did he have dreadlocks?
I think so. I just thought his hair was nappy for a minute, but...
Yeah, I thought I saw like Rastafarian like dreadlocks in the back of his head. I don't know for sure, but yeah, I was wondering if any of you guys picked that up.
I did not notice that.
About where we are right now, Jason's, killing everybody on the ship, and then there's this random line, and I want to know what your thoughts on it are. They say this is worse than the Microsoft conflict. People...
Oh my god! That was the best part. I was like, ooh, I'm like, can we watch that movie instead? I'm like, can we just skip this and go to the past of the Microsoft conflict? I was like, what was that movie? So many things popped into my head. I was like, okay, so in my mind, like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates had like, risen an army of like fucking nerds and shit to like fight each other, and they like took over the world, and it was like Skynet and Terminator. Maybe that's what happened to the Earth. Because at the very beginning, the Earth is all barren and shit and all that. When they come down there and they're like, oh, there's no contaminants or whatever, maybe that was because of the Microsoft conflict.
That's our calling. We need to make that movie. We need to make the movie in between Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X.
Oh my god, yes. The Microsoft conflict, the movie.
It needs to be the Microsoft conflict subtitle, The Rise of Rex. You just got Apple and Microsoft going at it, and Linux rises up like a phoenix, like the Ron Paul of operating systems.
God. Is that why the technology in the future is so inconsistent? Because one of the things that bothered me the whole time we were watching this is I'm like, okay, it's almost 500 years in the future, and there is not a single camera anywhere on this fucking spaceship. Like, nowhere. They have a VR room, they have laser guns, they have androids, but there were no cameras anywhere. They could never tell where Jason was at any point.
They come from that inner city school that can't afford stuff like that,
You went
This
there.
This isn't like those prestige private, institutions and universities. They come from that little community college.
Well, no, they come from another planet. They come from the prestige, school of Mars. Oh, we don't do that on Mars. That's more of a Venus thing.
Right.
But that explains why the teachers fucking wanted the students. They just can't afford anybody
Yeah,
better.
exactly, yeah.
And that also explains why he wants to sell Jason for money.
Yeah, because I'm like, Guy, how hard up are you for cash? Like, seriously, like, do you have like mob gambling debts or some shit? Because you were willing to sacrifice the entire crew of this ship, your students and yourself, for the potential of theoretical money that you might get? Because that's what didn't make sense to me. Even all the way up until Jason kills him, he's still trying to negotiate with him like, hey, we can make a fortune. And I'm like, are you fucking crazy?
Even in the future, teachers don't
You'll
make
be
shit.
great. I mean, I know teacher salaries aren't all that great, but Jesus Christ, man, like that was what he was willing to sacrifice for that. I was like, okay, I guess, sure, we'll go with that. As well, too, I couldn't figure out what exactly the appeal was of Jason at that point. I get what they were trying to do at the beginning when they were like, hey, we can weaponize him, or we can figure out how he regenerates and we can replicate that. But you have nanotechnology now. You don't need him anymore.
Yeah.
And I never understood why he was supposed to be valuable after that. I'm like, yeah, he's a 500-year-old serial killer. That's cool, I guess. You could have just put his mask in a museum or something and probably still got the same effect. But you don't need Jason for any kind of, medical purposes, because you can literally rebuild someone from nothing. So it didn't make sense, his motivation to me at that point.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, whoa, we have this old school, way back in the day thing, and yet we can also regenerate him and make him alive as well. So it's like, oh, people would pay good money to see that, and it's whatever. It's the whole Jurassic World thing.
Yep.
It's like, would they though? Like, I guess.
I wouldn't pay.
So it was so odd too, because they make it a point to explain to the professor and other people on the ship who Jason is and why he's a threat and this, that, and the other. But they somehow had a program in the VR machine to replicate Camp Crystal Lake all the way down to like the horny camp counselors and everything else. And I'm like, wait, I thought you guys didn't know who Jason was.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Cause he's like loading Crystal Lake program circa 1980. And I'm like, wait, what? I was like, wait a minute. You like 10 minutes ago, you didn't even know what Jason was, which bodes the other question of, if you didn't know Jason was at that research facility, why did they pick that place to go to? Like, they literally never explain what the whole point of them being there was. Yeah, they explain away the field trip shit, but it's like, why that place though?
I'm willing to overlook that just because of the way he killed those two girls.
Oh my god, that shit was
Let's
boss.
have premarital sex.
Oh my god, yes. So
premarital lesbian sex.
So when they load the program, initially it's just the camp, and Jason sees our poor man's Andrew Garfield, and he's like, oh no, I think he saw me. So he uploads this other program that like spawns these girls. And they're like, hey, want to have some beer? And the other girl's like, want to smoke some pot? And then, and then they say, want to have premarital sex? And then together they go, we love premarital sex. And they take their tops off and they're all giggling and shit. And it's just like, okay, is this like a facsimile of what the AI thinks people were like in the 1980s? Or did someone program this specifically for that?
I think it was specifically to be tongue-in-cheek with the tropes.
I guess so.
Like,
well,
really,
yeah, that's the meta reason, but the in-universe reason is what I'm trying to figure out. Because honestly, I feel like the Andrew Garfield kid, I feel like that was his programming, because they keep making fun of him for fucking the android throughout the movie, and I feel like this was all some shit that he came up with on his own.
I see what you're saying. Like, if it weren't sort of breaking the wall and letting us know of, you know, how the movies were back in the day, how did he figure it out that would entice him?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like, if you don't know that, you know, his backstory and what would bait him, you know, is like girls, nudity, sex, shit like that, then why that thing specifically? You could have just spawned a bunch of just random kids at a camp, but they made that very, very specific to Jason. And I'm like, well, I thought you barely even knew what Jason was.
But I do have to say, this scene deserves a reward for editing, because we go away from that, from the girls, and we come back to him beating the one girl in the sleeping bag against the other.
The audience
so funny.
The audience probably thought, okay, this is finally the time Jason's actually going to get some. He's going to finally just break down and decide to have sex. Nope, he decides to take one and beat the other with it.
Oh yeah. It is set up that way, because after they take their tops off and they're all giggling and getting in the sleeping bags, the way he does walk towards them, it almost seems like he's gonna like pull his dick out, and it's like, oh, okay, this is gonna turn into a porno. And then, like you said, they cut back and he's beating the one girl to death with the other girl in the sleeping bag, and it's like, oh, that's not how I thought this was gonna turn out at all.
And you can just hear one of them going, ow, ow, ow.
Most creative death ever. God, that was so good.
Oh yeah, it was great. Great. And I was like, now, was that supposed to be a nod to one of the older Friday the 13th movies? Because I know there's one where
there was one death where he did that. He grabbed a girl. I think it was maybe part 6. I'm not sure, but he did grab a girl, wrap her up in the sleeping bag, and it only took one hit against the tree, and she was done.
And didn't he do it in the remake too?
Maybe it is. I'm thinking of the remake, but.
Yeah, because I know that happens in one of the other movies. I just don't know which one. But not to this degree. Like this, they definitely upped the ante with this one. Because I was like, you know what? This movie is shit, but that part was actually pretty cool.
That was some kind of revenge kill. I mean, like, you've already beaten the both of them together for so long, and then he was like, I hate you, bitch. Yep. And then threw her against the tree one more time. Like, I just gotta get one more hit in.
Which... That scene, though, calls into question Jason's logic, because if you remember earlier in the movie, he kills the stoner kid and, you know, nondescript Jason Statham knockoff guy in the VR room when they're like fighting the aliens or whatever. And so he knows that that's not real.
Yeah.
So why would he even fall for that bait for killing the girls? Because once he discovers that when he cuts the one kid in half and he cuts the other guy's head off and they're still talking, and then the lights go up and you see him sitting there and then he kills him again, it's like, well, you know that wasn't real. When you saw the kid through the door or whatever and was starting to approach him, you knew that it was all a facade then. So I was like, why did he fall for that?
Yeah. I mean, he kind of got it a little bit. I mean, that's why those two girls were created anyway. But yeah, I think he started getting immune to that kind of like parlor trick, and yeah, just too little, too late.
One of the things that I did find funny was the engineer character. He is like the most oblivious character in the entire movie. He's the heavyset guy that's sleeping at the beginning when they're trying to come back to the ship, and he needs to open the doors for them so they can come redock with the main ship. And when they wake him up, he says, "Oh, what do you want?" And they're like, "Open the damn doors," or something like that. And it's like, well, what do you think they wanted? Like, you sent a team of your crew down to the Earth. Like, what did you think they're waking you up for? It's your job to, maintain the airlock. And then later, he's working on something, and Jason's already killed like half the fucking crew of the ship, and he's just like tinkering away like nothing's going on. And I'm like, how do you not know what's happening right now? Then after they shoot the shit out of Jason in that room, he pops up again later, and he's still, when all the kids are locked into the room and they're listening to the guards get killed, and he's like, what's going on? And it's like, are you fucking high? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, how do you not know what's happening right now?
I know he made it from point A to point B and didn't see any bodies or anything on his way. He's just like, what is going on?
Well, even if he didn't, I'm like, you did see when they shot Jason, like, in right in front of you, right? You do remember that happening, right? It's like, why are you so confused? You should know, or at least kind of be vaguely aware of what's going on. But he just seemed oblivious.
X-Men moment number 2, though. He turned into fucking Nightcrawler. They lit his ass up, and he somehow disappeared in the gunfire?
Yes. Yeah, because he's just standing there, like, just taking bullets left and right. And then when they stop firing, he's just gone. And they're like, where'd he go? And it's like, what were you fucking shooting at just then? Like, what do you mean, where did he go? Though, to be fair, this is some of the worst, like, shooting I have ever seen in a movie. Like, Jason was literally standing in one spot, and they're all, like, spraying the room, like, left to right. And I'm like, why are you shooting like this?
No, I did notice that too.
Like, the whole time I kept thinking to myself, like, if you would just concentrate your fire on one spot, you could probably take him down.
And no headshots whatsoever. Let's just continue to shoot the body for no reason. Yeah. No reason. No headshots.
Yeah, thank you, right? It wasn't until he fights the android where she finally, I guess because she's the android, so she's smart, I guess, she actually takes out his legs and shoots him, blows his arm off, blows his head off. I'm like, yeah, they could have did that like 13 other times during the movie. Because usually in the Friday the 13th movies, one of the conceits is, a lot of these people don't have the right weapons to fight Jason to stop him. And if they only had guns or something, they could put him down. But in this, like, they have, like, future guns. And they still can't seem to figure out to just shoot him in the fucking head.
Well, when they actually do light him up, or when the android lights him up and, like, blows off a chunk of his head, it takes me back to the very beginning when they said the military for 2 years did all this stuff but couldn't kill him. It's like, so they couldn't kill him then. Did they not think of blowing his fucking head off then?
Thank you.
That's a good point.
Because in a lot of like movies like this, it's usually like take your standard zombie movie. You can, blow off all kind of parts of their body, but you got to destroy their brain. It's like, even if, it won't kill him in the sense that you would kill a normal person, it would at least stop him from being able to use his motor function. So for all intents and purposes, he'd be dead. But it's like, at no point does anybody ever go, yeah, decapitate him, and then it'll just be done.
So speaking of, he gets blown to shit. He comes back. Evil gets an upgrade. Question.
Oh my god!
You remember the tagline?
I forgot.
Question for you guys: who wore it better, Jason or Lord Zed?
Oh, good job.
You see,
good job.
I actually, from that point on, I referred to him as Super Shredder.
He's Super Shredder to me. Yeah, I got the Super Shredder vibe.
That's good. So we got Lord Zed, Super Shredder, and I just kept calling him Mecha Jason for the rest of it because I was like, yeah, he's like Mecha Godzilla now. I'm like, he's...
Well, actually, maybe you might be able to get away with calling him Jax just because it was his right, chest and shoulder
shit, from
that
Mortal
was
Kombat.
mechanized, not his entire body. Yeah.
Pretty much. Which...
Okay, but then again, what really bugged me is that when he came back all metallic or titanium or whatever, he went to use his machete to swipe down, and fucking Olivia Munn just stops.
Oh
him with
my
his
god,
hand.
That was so weird. I don't know what that was about.
She pulled like a Captain America versus Thanos and just stopped his hand, and you're just like, wait a minute, what? No, that would not work out like that. I know we're trying to be dramatic right now, but he's stronger now than he's ever been, and you're telling me that this chick is 80 pounds soaking wet just stopped him? I was like, okay.
A bullet, you literally just saw 15 seconds prior, the android shooting bullets was ping, ping, ping off of him, but a human arm has the force. Just does she have something in her elbow?
Though, to be fair, she got the nano treatment as well. And real quick, before we go any further, we have to talk about how the nanotechnology in this movie looks like metallic ramen noodles. The whole time it came over somebody, Ben kept saying it, we were watching, and he's like, why does it look like ramen? And I was like, that is an excellent point. I don't know why it looks like ramen noodles. I mean, I know why, because they had no budget and it was 2001 special effects, but still, it looked terrible. But the thing, I keep trying to pick apart the logic of it. The thing that bothered me about the nanotechnology is when they use it on her, it just heals her, in her biological functions. It heals her body, stuff like that. She doesn't get a metal abdomen because she got stabbed in the stomach. So why, when it happens to Jason, he gets all these metal prosthetics and shit? Shouldn't it just regrown his, missing body parts?
Yeah, that was a little weird. I didn't know if there was any kind of metal sort of thing next to him to where it merged him because he was on the ground instead of piked up on the bed. I couldn't figure that out.
And it was nice enough to make him a new hockey mask, which is always nice. It gave him a makeover and shit, it was nice of the AI to do that for him.
And their logic to shoot him and then leave him on that bed, which they know is a healing bed.
But to be fair, at that point, half the ship was blown up, and there was no reason that shit should have started up the way it did. Because it wasn't in most movies where somebody will spill something on the console and it'll spark and start doing something, or accidentally knock something over and it hits a button. They just walked out of the room and it just started up on its own. And it's what the hell is happening right now?
Well, was that... I don't remember where in the movie that was. Was that before or after they learned that the ship only had a half hour before it blew?
That was after that.
So at some point they could have at least given us as the viewer the understanding that he may have come back to life. If we can just outlast him, he'll be blown up. But at no point did they do that. They actually tried to fight him.
No, they don't establish anything to give you context of how the timeline is working at that point because... Yeah, they find out that the ship is going to be destroyed or whatever within half an hour. And there's a rescue ship that's supposed to be coming to get them. And they're like, oh, if we destroy the bridge between the two parts of the ship, we can, last that 30 minutes until they get here. That's when, Jason becomes, fucking Super Shredder, Lord Zed, whatever the fuck. And then they have the fight in the hallway and he gets blown out into space and all that. But it kept bothering me the whole time because I'm like, well, maybe that explains why she stopped his arm because she had the nano machines. So maybe that gave her some kind of superpowers too.
And explain that.
Because that was my whole thing.
I mean, I realized she had chainmail on for a brief moment earlier in the film, but
oh, maybe that's what it was. Maybe that chainmail was on the bed, and then that merged with the nano machines, and that's why Jason's half metal.
Well, maybe that's what also propped up and pushed her boobs together for the last half of the film.
Right.
At some point, almost every female character just had cleavage.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I noticed that halfway throughout. In the beginning when she first gets woken up, they give her, she's wearing one of the students' outfit because she comments on like, oh, you're welcome for my shirt and top and this, that, and the other. And she's fairly decently covered at that point. Then at some point she does a wardrobe change into like this tank top thing. And then that's, fine. It was weird, but I was like, okay, whatever. And then later, like, they give her like a push-up bra or something because her cleavage becomes like absurd towards the end. And it's like, okay, what is happening right now?
It was a battle tactic. She had to show the boobs so that it would distract him, and then she had to make more of her skin show to free up her limbs.
Gotcha, to bait him. Right. She's like, I have more, range of motion now that I took all that other heavy shit off.
So can I just say that Olivia Munn, like, God bless her, she was like, can we just beam out of here? And they're like, what the fuck is beaming?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
But here's the thing. They have nanotechnology, and yet they have not made any teleportation devices. You still got to call Uber to come get you, and it takes 45 minutes for them to arrive. but they have nanotechnology to fucking heal you and put an arm back on after it's been like cut off, but you still got to call Uber to come get you. This is ridiculous.
Yeah,
exactly. If you can regenerate human tissue, why can't you send human tissue from one point to another?
Thank you.
And they had no clue what beaming
like,
is. Somebody missed the mark and never brought teleportation around.
They say explicitly in the movie that they are going through hyperspace. It's like, so you're telling me you figured out how to travel at the speed of light, but you don't know how to teleport people? I was like, okay. I was like, okay. Oh, and they don't believe in cameras either. So, it's whatever. We have a whole VR room.
They don't even know what mics are.
Exactly. It was so weird. It was so inconsistent because I'm like, hey, look, I know this isn't, high science fiction. Like, I'm not expecting much from this, but it's like, come on, guys. Like, whoever wrote this, like, this had to have been like the first draft and nobody ever, like, did a proofreading of this and went over it and gave notes, because there's multiple parts in the movie where it's like, wait a minute, if you can do this, why can't you do that?
On that note, the director actually wanted this movie to have the best acting out of the entire franchise. To the point to where they did rehearsals and all of the, like, he really wanted all of the acting to be top notch.
Wow, it doesn't show at all.
No, like I said, the guy who plays the sergeant, he was the only character that I bought throughout the movie. But even him, it's like absurd. Like, there's a scene where Jason stabs him through a wall, through his, like, stomach, and he says, oh, it's going to take a lot more than that to kill me. Then he stabs him again, and he's like, yep, that'll do it. It's like, are you serious?
You should have just died right there. I would have been totally fine if you had just ended your life. That was the best line to go out on. And then he came back.
But then again, he's not dead.
That guy, I feel like that guy was like Jason's like doppelganger, because he teleports throughout the movie, you can't kill him, and he's like tough as fucking nails. Because after he gets stabbed twice in the stomach and you think he's dead, they later find that spike that he was on and he's not there anymore. And then Olivia Munn finds him and he's like across the other end of the ship and he's like bleeding out and it seems like he's dying. And then she comes back again and he's gone again. And then we see him later when he stabs Jason in the neck when the android's fighting him, and she's like, it's okay, I got it. And it's like, do you though? But during that part, he has like all these bandages on him, and I'm like, so is there a deleted scene somewhere where they bandaged him up, or did he do that to himself?
Yeah.
What I want to know is the layout of the ship, because it seems like only him and then Jason and Munn know the ship better than anybody else, and two of them were never on it to begin with. Like,
right? Olivia Munn and Jason knew the layout of that ship better than anybody else on that ship. I'm like, how is he hiding from you? He has never been here before. And when she says, oh, why can't we just go over here and decouple this and this, that, and the other? And they're like, yeah, that would work. And we're just like, wait, what the fuck? Like, she's explaining to you how to make this work. It's like this is 500 years in the future. She should be completely just oblivious and just drooling the entire time. And it was so weird.
And why did Jason hide? For a second, Jason hid in a dark corridor, like Metal Gear Solid, yanked one of those militia whatever guys in, and just snapped their neck. Like, since when is he... He always came like a walking tank that would just walk, just take whatever you give him and just keep killing. But I've never seen him hide.
That's a good point, because usually Jason's like the one walking through like the front door of the cabin and just like, jumping down through windows and shit. He doesn't normally, but maybe, you know what? That kind of goes back to that first scene that we talked about where he's in this big empty room, he kicks the guy through the door, and then he shows up in the hallway. If you just look just off camera, Jason's just kind of hiding up against the wall, just like, if I just don't move, they won't see me. He's like Drax in Avengers Infinity War. Like, if I just move really slow, I'll be invisible and they'll never know I was there.
Yeah, we can always go back and explain why he puts bodies in certain positions for them to reveal themselves at a certain time. And, like, I can't reveal that I'm here just yet. Let me hide bodies around first. So let me keep myself a secret.
That is an element that they didn't use in this movie.
No.
There wasn't a lot of, like, bodies that fell out of, like, air ducts or nothing like that, which, it's a shame. Like, of all the things that you were gonna get rid of from the series, that you should have kept.
But wait a minute, no. Didn't they once, when they were in the room with all the weird, like, torture devices, didn't once he get knocked into one of those, like, spiked anchors? And then later on in the scene, it shows a woman on that instead?
No, I know what you're talking about. There is, we're wrong. There is one scene where there's a body hanging from one of those anchors in the weird fucking 50 Shades of Grey torture room. And there is one scene where they do that. But no, when Jason, the sergeant I thought had found the solution and put him down. They shoot Jason into the spike. He gets impaled on the spike. They raise it and then they blow out his kneecaps. And they're like, it's all good, we got him. And then he like pulls himself off it and just keeps walking. And it's like, wait a minute, didn't they just shoot your kneecaps out? Like, how quickly does this regeneration shit work?
I could have swore at one point too, they're like, keep your eyes
on.
Yeah,
it was that same scene.
There's somebody's
it was that
back
same
to
scene.
Him. And then they're back to him.
Yeah,
so
he
him,
turns around right after they say, keep an eye on him. He's like, yes, sir, and immediately turns his back to him. And then Jason just picks himself up off the spike. And it's like, did he not just say, keep your eyes on him?
You deserve to die for that.
Yeah. I like stood up. I was laying down watching this and I stood up. I was pissed.
So did you roll to your side or did you go straight up?
I rolled to my side and then I lifted myself up because I was just so angry.
That was your moment to try that.
I know, yeah. And it didn't work. I was trying.
Oh my God. For such a shitty movie, we've all become marks to it.
I know. Well, one of the things I did enjoy though was that the android chick, she becomes Mila Jovovich from the Resident Evil movies, like, towards the end. He's like, oh, I gave her an upload. And I'm like, was that a euphemism for he fucked the android?
Did the nipples finally attach?
Right, oh my God, I forgot about the nipples. The magnetic nipples that fall off, yes. But because first she's saying to him, like, what is our survival probability? And she's like 12%. And he's like, that's it? He's like, we can't do anything else to make that better? And then they make out and she's like, it jumped to 53%. And I was like, are you fucking serious?
It's the power of love.
I thought we've already established that, like, premarital sex is bad. It gets you killed, but making out's fine.
See, I guess it only counts if you're fucking a human. If you're fucking an android, then your survival probability actually goes up.
I'm gonna go home and fuck a toaster.
Hey, he did make her, so obviously sex boosts up her power level. She just leveled up the minute she got, made out. That's how he made her.
So, I mean, a little bit of tongue turned.
Yeah, over 9,000 for sure. What was funny about that too is I get what they were trying to do there. It was kind of like the Martha moment in Batman vs Superman. It just didn't get executed correctly. Like, I get what you're trying to do here, but you didn't go, the follow through wasn't there. They were basically trying to imply that because she cares about him now, she's going to fight harder to try and make sure that they survive. Like, I guess that was what they were trying to imply.
That makes sense.
Weird sex bot shit.
Well, that's the only thing that could constitute a possible B storyline in the film. She wanted to be human.
That is true.
But they never really went to.
That is true, because she does make several references about wanting to be like the other girls and this, that, and the other. And yeah, that's a subplot that they actually did kind of, explain throughout. So I'll give them that. At least. But I did enjoy just how not only was she just this badass, fighter and shit all of a sudden, but her whole personality changed suddenly. Cause before she was very subdued and just kind of like, she reminded me of like Data from Star Trek. And then after he gives her an upload, now she's all like snarky and like making quips and shit. And I was just like, oh, okay. I was like, so her personality.
She totally psychs him out when she gets stabbed. And she's like, psych. shoot him. That was good.
Oh, yes. And Sean, here, this is your opportunity to get all of your puns in because there is so many puns in this movie. It's not even funny. Like,
do you remember any?
Oh, please tell me you have a pun count.
I don't have a pun count. The one that kind of was like random to me was when the woman finds her friend skewered on the big drill and she thinks, my friend's dead. I'm going to make a joke. He's screwed.
I know, right? I was like, wow, like, aren't you like brothers in arms and shit? And it's just like, oh, fuck that guy. He was an asshole. Nobody ever liked him anyway. or when the girl gets sucked through the fucking air hole in the wall, and right before she does, she says, this sucks on so many levels. I wanted to turn the movie off right then. I was like, it's almost over. Can we just stop now? Because I can't deal with this shit no more.
So Roger Ebert, he actually gave this movie a 0.5 and followed it with that quote. This sucks on so many levels to describe the movie.
Nice.
Wasn't he like the best critic?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was that a term before this movie, or can we thank Jason X for coining sucks on so many levels? Because I've heard that so many times in my life, but I wonder, is its genesis from this fucking movie? They were just making a pun for that scene and it just caught on?
Oh, it's a
No,
good
I doubt
question.
that was an idiom inspired by that.
No, let me believe that that's how it played out. I want to believe that.
You're
that
giving
Jason
this movie too much credit. I doubt it.
I want to go to my grave thinking that that's how that pun came up, or that saying came about. But yeah, it just kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the tone. It's like part action movie, part sci-fi thriller, part comedy. It's this weird, it never feels like a horror movie at any point during the entire film.
Well, it makes me wonder, too, did they intentionally film it so that it wouldn't have a lot of gore or anything, or was it something they had to just extract out in post? Because you never really saw anybody die in any gruesome fashion.
Besides...
yeah, there was a lot of off-screen camera work going on when people died, and it's hilarious because this movie had the least amount of footage cut out to keep it rated R than any of the other movies. This was the most tamed. Yes.
Huh.
And
they, like, had all these off-screen deaths and shit. I mean, maybe they went into it, shooting it that way on purpose so they wouldn't have to, cut out a bunch of footage. But, the one that I wanted to see the most out of all of them was when the girl got sucked through the hole in the wall. I'm like, if you're going to show any death, that's the one you should have showed. And they didn't.
There should have been a lot more gore around that little hole. I mean, she couldn't have just gone through just all whole body. That would have, there's too many sharp edges.
No, I wanted to see, like, her, like, thigh just, like, still wiggling in the wall, like, as the rest of her body.
Well, I was hoping it would have been, like, a little bit like Alien Resurrection, like, near the
end.
Yeah. When the alien gets, his entire body just sucked right through. I mean, at least in the first Nightmare on Elm Street at the very end, when they have that dream sequence, you can kind of, like, see a blow-up doll or a mannequin in the shape of the mother get pulled through the window by Freddy at the very end. We got nothing. All we got was the implied death of her in what appeared to be like just some little pieces of flesh.
Yeah.
That was it.
No body, so she's still alive.
Yeah. But what really upset me too is, and this happens a lot in sci-fi movies when you're in space, the second that hole was punctured in the ship, it would suck out all the oxygen. Everybody in the room would die instantaneously. But they had that sequence where, like, oh, she was getting sucked, hanging onto the grill. You're holding arms, trying to pull her in.
Which in the whole time, they're like, Janessa! You just reached, Janessa! And he's, like, still yelling, and it's like, okay, even if you could say, well, yeah, you could hold the air in your lungs, and then once that ran out, there's no new air for you to take in. But once they started yelling and all that shit, I'm like, yeah, no, you guys should have suffocated already. Not only that, they basically pulled a Titanic during that scene, because you remember how in Titanic how Rose was on the boat or on the door floating in the water, and Jack had to freeze to death in the water because she was a cunt and wouldn't let him get on the door with her. This movie does the exact same thing where the Andrew Garfield kid, he's holding the android's head as he's like yelling back, like, hold on! If he would have just let go of the android and let his other arm free, he could have probably helped them grab that girl and brought her back into the ship. But he's too busy trying to hold on to his fucking fleshlight and he just won't let it go. And I'm like, you could have probably grabbed hands with Olivia Munn and got that girl and brought her back in. But instead, he's one arm on the railing and one arm's on his sex bot, and he just refuses to let it go. So much so to the point where he sends her back into the ship to grab the head after they get off the ship.
It was that important.
Well, I'll take it back even farther. That one girl, we completely skipped this, that one death. That one girl somehow made it to the escape pod.
Oh, yes.
In one piece. But she was freaking out so much. They're like, you gotta unhook the attachment. Let us in, unhook it. And she just like says, no, fuck you guys. And drives off without unhooking it, and then crashes in the bottom of the ship and dies. And I'm just like laughing at this part.
I hate her.
I'm like, this girl was just fucking hot mess.
And isn't she the girl that's sleeping with the professor at the beginning?
No, she was sleeping with the guy. Yeah, she was sleeping with the guy.
The one that got sucked through.
She's the one responsible for all this shit.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, no, okay, so she was the girl that was banging the guy when Jason first wakes up.
Yeah, she's the one that banged the guy, and then Jason first stabs him. And for whatever reason,
yeah, that was so weird too. Yeah, he stabs that guy and then he just pulls him through the door and just leaves. And it's like, wait, what the fuck just happened? It's like, aren't you gonna kill her too? Nah, I'll save her for later.
No, we need her to use the escape pod so that we can progress the story. Like, we don't have another person in the film, so we got to keep her alive until like this part.
Yeah, but I mean, overall, like this whole thing, it's shit from start to finish. But the one saving grace is, again, the Sarge. Like, there comes a point towards the end where he has to go outside and fix something on the ship. And he basically turns into Master Chief. Like, I don't know if you guys caught this too watching it. That spacesuit that he puts on pretty much looks like the suit Master Chief wears in the Halo games. It's just not green. and I want to go to my grave believing not only that this movie started the term sucks on so many levels, but that this movie inspired the Halo games. I just want to put that out there.
Well, you guys can thank the horrible production of Freddy vs. Jason for this film. We would not have Jason X if it wasn't for Freddy and Jason just taking forever to come out. They needed a movie to come out and remind people that Jason still exists and to keep people interested while they were still working on even getting a script for Freddy vs. Jason. That's the only reason.
It feels so haphazardly.
Yes, that's exactly why. But it also brings up a question that I want to bring to all of you, though. So lately, we've been getting direct sequels and sometimes reboots of movies that are over 20 years old. So, like, obviously, back in the day, you wanted to come out with a film of a character like every 2 or 3 years to make sure it stays in people's minds. But we're obviously at a point now where a movie can be dug up from like 30, 40 years ago and still appeal to today's audiences who may not even know who they are. So do you believe that a franchise like this can still live on if they didn't make a movie for like 10 or 15 years?
The Friday the 13th franchise
in
general? I would say yes, because how much time passed between the reboot and Freddy vs. Jason?
Oh, I would have to...
Oh, maybe a year. 2 tops.
Like 6 months.
No, I mean, but they're talking about remaking Gremlins, which, I mean, part 2 was how long ago?
91.
Exactly. And, Jurassic World was over 10 to 15 years. I mean, it's possible and people are still going. And so it's like, let this character sit for a little bit. You don't have to come out with something to just appease us while we, go on. The only thing that it didn't work for was Scream. For some reason, part 4, after their huge break from part 3, just didn't work for today's audiences. But all these other franchises, they're coming back without a hitch.
Though I think what the issue is with Scream, I mean, I guess it did successful on the TV version on MTV, I guess people like that, I suppose. I don't even know if it's still on the air.
They're coming out with the third season.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, I think part of what it is not only nostalgia, but I think, like, specifically for the Friday the 13th franchise, I think there was some kind of rights issue that they kind of had to keep making these movies in succession like that, or the rights were gonna revert back to some other studio.
Right.
Because when they did the reboot, wasn't it like, I feel like there was a different studio that did it than had done the prior Friday the 13th movies.
Because wasn't the reboot with New Line by then?
Yeah, because I want to say Miramax had it before that. But I could be wrong. I would have to research it more, but I could be wrong. But I think that's kind of like, it's almost like a Spider-Man thing over at Sony. Like, they have to keep making a Spider-Man movie like every few years or the rights will revert back to Marvel. So no matter what, they're like, hey, we're just going to keep cranking these bitches out, before the deadline comes, so we can maintain the rights to it, I guess.
I want to retract my previous statement. Gremlins 2 came out in 1990. I thought it was 91 because that's when I first watched it.
Unforgivable.
Hey, man, this is the internet. People are going to flame me if I'm wrong. But going back to your question earlier, I think it's more a matter of nostalgia. Whether something's good or bad, if it resonates with us from, like, our youth, then it can be revitalized. Especially seeing as, 20 to 30 years from now, people who may have watched them when they're younger may be in a position to bring it back. So while they do it for themselves, it can be, a spectator.
Look at
audience.
it, for example. I mean, that was a TV movie from the 90s, and there was nothing done with that for decades until now.
Well, same goes for video game franchises, film, television, any real form of media tends to reprise its role later. I mean, I may be getting the numbers off here, but it seems like every 20 to 25 years, things from the past make a return.
Oh my God, you know what that means, right? We can expect a reboot of Jason X within the next 5 years.
It can't get any worse.
This shit came out in 2001, I believe. So yeah, any day now, get ready, because Jason X will be back in theaters again.
So would it be Jason X2, Jason XI?
Oh, okay, so then in 40 years, they'll reboot it again, then it'll be Jason XXX.
Oh no.
Yeah, Jason versus Vin Diesel.
Oh my God! Don't say that too loud, because somebody will hear that. Vin Diesel will hear that shit, and he will be on the phone with his agent today.
He's like, "There's only one Triple X here."
I am Vin Diesel.
Yeah, Vin Diesel as Jason. There you go. You just merge the two franchises together. So then you can have Vin Diesel in a hockey mask driving a car, and then he crashes the car, and then he flies out the windshield, and then does a barrel roll onto a surfboard, and then just goes and kills people with a machete as he's going down.
Wow.
Nah, man, we need him to infiltrate another franchise. Let's get Jason versus Casey Jones.
Ooh, hockey mask versus hockey mask. Yeah, I'd watch that. No turtles though. Just Casey Jones, Jason, and Super Shredder, and then that's the movie.
How would we tell them apart?
Lord Zed, though.
Okay. The very, very end of the movie. The ship has blown up. Our two knockoff characters have survived. Our poor man's Andrew Garfield and our poor woman's Olivia Munn, plus the android head, has survived. Jason has been blown up, we assume, and then it cuts to his body floating towards the ship, coming after them. And I was like, so is he Princess Leia in Star Wars The Last Jedi? Because I'm like, why is he flying through space? Okay, if you don't know how space works, there is no friction or air resistance in space. So if some force is applied to something, it will just continue to go that way forever unless something runs into it to stop it. So unless Jason was blown in that trajectory already, there was no reason that he should have self-propelled himself back towards them. And then not only that, but the Sarge shows up again out of nowhere and tackles Jason in space and then rides him down to the Earth's atmosphere like he's a fucking horse, and he's like punching Jason in the back of the head as they're like catching on fire in the atmosphere.
The ambiguously gay duo just donkey punching Jason into the atmosphere. What we can only assume is
Earth 2, I would assume. Yeah.
This was such
And
a
then you
beautiful
just see this
scene.
couple on like a cliff, looking at that as if it was like a shooting star, and so they kiss. And then I see just Jason's decapitated
Well, they make it a
head.
point to say, "Oh, look, it fell in a lake. Let's go check it out." And then, they show him. So it's implied from that, we're going to make another one and Jason's still not dead. And it's like, okay, guys, at this point, we've taken him to space. It's 500 years in the future, and now we're on a new Earth, and they think we're just going to keep letting the franchise roll from that. Like, they had to do something. Like, they had to do a Freddy vs. Jason by that point, because it's like you've literally run out of ideas. Like, you've completely run the gamut of all possible scenarios for And which is sad, though, because I'm sad that they did Freddy vs. Jason, because by the end of this, I was like, you know what? I would actually want to see how they would continue the franchise from here. How do you, what's Jason X2 or Jason 11 or whatever the hell you want to call it? Like, what would that movie have been? I would have loved to seen where they would have kept going with this after that.
Yeah.
So maybe he would have really been Mecha Jason by the end, and he would have been just a giant towering thing just destroying like New Tokyo or something like that. They could have just did that instead, and then just had Godzilla fight him at the end.
No, better yet, Mecha Jason versus Mecha Streisand. That's where we're going.
This one big kaiju big
pretty
battle.
much. And then you have to have a female protagonist who like falls into some goo or something, so she gets big. So then you have some giant breasted woman, that Jason is chasing through the city, because you have to have, your obligatory nudity in all these movies. And it was funny because at first I was like, oh, they're not really showing a lot of nudity in this one until we get to the, VR scene. And I was like, oh, okay, there we go. Because the android boobs don't count, because I don't know if that were actual tits in that or if that was just a prosthetic thing because her nipples fell off. So I'm like, I don't know if that counts.
I don't think it counted.
Yeah, it doesn't
So
count.
who would be this 50-foot woman? Would it be like a CGI person? Just-
Right.
No, it would be Jason X Mega Streisand X Barbed Wire.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
There we
Pamela
go.
Anderson.
Good job.
There
Good
we
reference.
go.
That was good. That was good.
And that's from a gay guy. Come on.
I know, you guys should have had these women like listed already, ready to cast.
Right. I was going to say, with this, our dream casting list going right here. But before we wrap up, was there anything else about this particular film or the franchise in general that you guys wanted to address that we might not have got to?
No, I mean, yeah, you've already covered. Yeah, you covered it. I mean, there was really nothing much to this movie except just to remind us why we like Jason. They just had him kill as many people as possible and just throw some technology in there and see if we can, like, fuck him up. Because Manhattan didn't work, so let's just throw a lot of CGI at him, see what happens.
Yeah, you give Jason a bowl of metal ramen noodles and just, send him on his way, and he will just massacre 20,000 people in one movie. So there you go.
Oh, so where do you guys think this movie falls on Rotten Tomatoes?
I would guess 15%.
Critic score 12, audience score 53.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Audience, I would say maybe 30, but critics will probably have it lower than 10.
It sits for critics. I don't know, or for audience, sorry. I don't know about critics,
Okay.
but 19%.
Oh, okay. So close. So I think I was the closest. I said 12.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you said 12. That's right.
Yeah, so do I win something?
I took some photos of myself. You'll be getting it in the mail soon.
Yes. I did it.
I just want to know whose career did this movie
Ooh,
make?
or break.
Because I did not recognize a single person.
Well,
From
we
this
do know that the Andrew Garfield knockoff was from Are You Afraid of the Dark? So we know that. The girl who plays the android, she was on a
Andromeda.
sci-fi show. Yeah, Andromeda, yes.
Yeah, they left
With,
to do that.
Kevin Sorbo.
Okay, so who exactly was the old guy who explained to the teacher? Like what was the-
Exposition man number 1. Because that's literally all he did.
Yeah, but I wish it would have at least given the guy
Yeah,
a name.
no, he doesn't even get a name, yeah. Yeah, so he's just Exposition Man 1.
Yeah, I was trying to look him up, but I couldn't. Yeah, they don't have a name for him.
No, I would love to see the cast list, because I would love to see what they have him named in the script. Guy on computer screen. Yeah, I think that was the only time they had a visual representation of another person in the movie, because when they're talking to the other ships, when they're talking to each other, they're never talking to each other visually. It's all auditory. The only time they actually do a FaceTime anything is at the very beginning of the movie, and they never use that technology again for any other purpose.
Yeah, I don't see him on this cast. I'm on IMDb right now. I'm trying to look him up. And no, I wouldn't even recognize him even if I saw his real name. I have no idea who was laying there.
Yeah, he was just some rando dude.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I don't have anything extra. What about you, Sean?
Nope, nothing else.
Ben, did you have anything else you want to add before we went?
Rest in peace.
Right, R.I.P. You were the VIP in this fucking movie.
Yeah.
We've talked about this movie enough. Like, I think we've given this movie more due than the people who wrote.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, this podcast about the movie will be longer than the movie.
I had fun doing this, guys. Like, this was great.
Yes, no, we had a blast. Thank you guys for having us on your show.
Thank you.
Oh, no. Thank you for agreeing to do this. This was fun. I mean, this is outside of our norm thing, so, you know, this was a fun experience to do something a little bit different. And then give our listeners some little extra bonus content to go along with our normal episodes. So I appreciate you guys coming on and doing this with us. But before we go, I want to make sure that anybody that follows us on Twitter, make sure that you follow the hashtag #AllTheHorror. There's going to be a lot of other podcasts that are going to be putting out episodes for this throughout the month of October. So if you enjoyed this and you want to hear the Movie Geek and Proud side of this, once we do with them, there's going to be a lot of these episodes coming out. We're trying to have it to where you have enough to where you can listen to one new episode every day for the month of October. So you have 31 days of all the horror goodness coming at you. So make sure that you are, if you're not following us on Twitter, make sure you go follow @GiantLeap, the number 4 Geeks. Movie Geek and Proud, throwing out your handle out there.
Yeah, so we are MGNP Podcast on Twitter.
Awesome. And where can they find your show? Like, obviously iTunes, but...
Yeah, so Movie Geek and Proud can be found on SoundCloud, iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, pretty much all the bigger ones. Google Play, we're on there too. So yeah, basically any podcast that you listen to, just look for Movie Geek and Proud, usually with the word and A-N-D. But yeah, it should be easy to find.
Awesome. All right, and again, I want to thank you guys for joining us and listening to us pretty much just tear apart Jason X. It's one of those movies that are so bad it almost becomes good again, but not quite. Again, if you enjoyed this, keep your ears open because there is going to be a lot more All the Horror coming at you. We appreciate you staying with us, and we will see you again soon.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Later.
Doses.